Hi everyone, Brittany here from By Brittany Goldwyn, a blog about DIY and houseplants. And today I have a care overview video for the lovely Thai Constellation Monstera. In one of my last care videos I did on the Scindapsus trubii moonlight plant, a couple people commented wanting to see my big Thai Constellation Monstera that I had right behind me in the video. And that's this guy right here. But what you didn't see is that I actually have a baby one as well. So today I'm going to be talking about how to care for this plant, where to find it, and pretty much everything you need to know about the plant and my experience with it. So in addition to my blog, I have a post all about how to care for the Thai Constellation Monstera, and I get a lot of emails from people who read that post. They find it on Pinterest or via Google with questions about where to find the plant. I also admin a group on Facebook called Houseplant Central with over 100,000 members, and Thai Constellation Monsteras or variegated Monsteras come up a lot in a group of that size with that many houseplant lovers. So today I'm going to be focusing specifically on the Thai Constellation Monstera, which is one type of variegated Monstera. So where can you find a Thai Constellation plant? Well, I mentioned I won the big one, but the small one I actually had long before I got the big one. When I first got this plant, it was a couple tiny leaves. I think it was 2.5 leaves. One was a half moon leaf and the variegation had died off, so technically a half of a leaf. And now it's got these big, beautiful, maturing leaves. I have really babied this plant since I got it. When I got it, it was definitely the most expensive plant I had ever gotten. I think I paid at the time for the plant, and I'll put a picture up of what it looked like when I got it. I think I paid around $200 for it. And I did pay less than I would have paid at a nursery because I went through one of my local plant buy-sell trade groups. So I live in the state of Maryland. We have a Facebook group. It's awesome. You can often either trade plants or get plants for just a little bit less than you would at a nursery. I love supporting nurseries, but sometimes it's just not in the cards to spend the amount of money that they need to charge on plants to make it worth their while. And this was one of those cases. I mean, also, I couldn't even find it in a nursery around where I live. So buying from someone who was just growing them themselves out of their home was the most economical option for me. Etsy is also an option, or other online plant shops. I have the most experience shopping on Etsy. And what I typically do on Etsy, I don't have loyalty to any shops in particular. I like to look at their recent reviews. So read through some of the recent reviews and only purchase from highly rated shops. And I've never had a bad experience on Etsy. The one time I did have a bad experience, they made it right and sent me another plant almost right away. So only good things to say about that method. There are a couple other big and reputable plant shops you can check out online. Just keep in mind the time of year when you're ordering a plant. If it is colder, then it's a little bit more risky to order a plant that is expensive, because even when sellers ship with a heat pack, that can sometimes not be enough. And you definitely don't want to pay a lot of money for a plant that's just going to die on its way to you. So I want to talk now a little bit about how to care for this plant. Obviously, when you're investing in any plant, whether it's a $10 plant or a $500 plant, you want to take good care of your plant. But I think you especially want to take good care of your plant when you're spending a lot of money on it. So I will go over light first, and then I'll kind of ramble into some of the other care tips I have for this plant. Now for light, since this is a variegated plant, it's going to need a little bit more light than a regular Monstera. So I have a non-variegated Monstera deliciosa. I keep that in bright indirect light and it's grown beautifully, but it can also do some more medium light levels on an established plant. This one I have either kept in my little glass greenhouse cabinet under grow lights for roughly 12 hours a day, or I have kept it in bright indirect light near a sunny window, or even outside in a shady spot. If you have it near a really sunny window or very close to grow lights or outside, basically wherever you put it, you want to make sure that it's not getting too much direct light. You will burn the leaves if it gets too much direct light. And I will show you on this leaf right here, you can see on the edges, there are some signs of it getting a little bit too much sun. Now I will say that is from when I put this outside. I had it in morning sun and I thought it would be fine, but I guess it was just a little bit too much sun. The leaves that came after it though have been fine. So the plant has, I think, acclimated very well to life outside. Again, I'm in Maryland, so I like to put a lot of my plants outside for the summer since it does get so humid here. Now, since I mentioned humidity, you want to have a lot of humidity for this plant for optimal growth. However, I'm kind of lazy when it comes to humidifiers, so I had this one relying on ambient humidity levels in my glass greenhouse cabinet. I did not have it by a humidifier, but like I mentioned, in the spring, I like to put a lot of my humidity loving plants outside in the shade for summer since it does get so unbearably humid where I live. This is obviously a tropical plant. It's not a cold hardy plant, so it will need to come indoors where I live, probably in late September, just depending on what the temperatures are dropping down to at night. I'll bring it inside once the temperatures have dropped down to consistently the low 50s at night, and that will also help it acclimate a little bit better to the temperatures and the lower humidity levels indoors if I don't just abruptly transition it from super warm, super humid outside to my 75-degree air-conditioned house inside. I have my Thai Constellations, both of them actually in a very chunky soil mix that I mixed up myself. I bought, I think it was the brand is Ocean Forest, indoor potting soil. I'm not really loyal to any brand. I usually just pick up a big bag of something at one of my favorite local nurseries, and then I add different things to the soil based on what plant it is. So I added extra perlite, a bit of cocoa coir, so the shredded kind. It's a really good alternative for peat moss. And then I added in a little bit of bark as well. For the big one, I put it in a pot that was a tiny bit too big for it when I sized it up. So I put extra bark in it to help facilitate some of that drainage and make sure that all of the extra water flowed out of the drainage holes when I watered it. I have this little guy in terracotta too because the terracotta absorbs water and it's great for maintaining the moisture levels. And I only water the plant when the top several inches of soil have dried out. That typically means once a week in the spring and summer, and maybe once every 2 weeks in the fall and winter when temperatures drop and the days are shorter. This plant is very prone to root rot, so you can prevent that by having a drainage hole in your pot, using a very chunky, well-draining soil, and only watering when the top several inches of soil have dried out. So as you can see on this plant here, I have a tiny little trellis that I put in here. It doesn't really need a trellis yet, but I figured I'd add one just in case I want to start staking it at some point once it starts pushing out more leaves. And then on my big one, I'm going to turn it around and show you, because this one definitely needed a big trellis. Big pot there. So I have what is a stackable, I think it's a cocoa coir pole. I did get this from Amazon. I'm not going to take it off completely, but just to show you here, it does stack. There is one more, there's a fourth pole that it comes with. So when the plant gets much bigger, I'll be able to add that as well. What I like about this pole is one, it's stackable. It has this twine all the way around it, so you can easily tie up the different parts of the plant. Now, we moved into a much smaller house recently, so that means a lot less surface area for plants. So I did buy myself a little bit of extra space by staking these leaves up pretty tightly. Otherwise, the plant would have a very large spread with these large mature leaves spreading out here. As far as propagating your Monstera Thai Constellation, it's just like propagating any other Monstera plant, except a little bit more nerve-wracking, I know. I have not done it with a Thai Constellation just because my plant is not that mature yet, but I will show you, if you look here, you can see a root going down in here. And then on this side, you can also see, you might be able to see that there's a little root here. If you wanted to propagate it, you would just need to make sure that the plant had an aerial root or a growth point or a node. Any of those things will work. For this plant, I would recommend rooting it in some sort of moss. I would not water root this plant just because I would be a little bit worried about shock transitioning from water roots to soil roots. I would use a mixture of damp moss and perlite to help with drainage and just make sure to keep the humidity high and make sure the moss doesn't stay too wet or else the roots will probably rot. Unfortunately, I did deal with a pest issue on my smaller Monstera last year. I noticed tiny little creepy crawlies on one of the leaves, which I've since cut off. It was in a larva stage. I did not know what it was, but of course I saw it on this plant and I was terrified of it. No idea where it came from because it was in my greenhouse cabinet and none of the other plants seemed to have been affected that were on the shelf in the cabinet with it. So the first thing I did was I posted to the Maryland plant group asking for help IDing what the pest was. And I got some helpful answers. Basically what I did was treat it like I would treat the plant as if it had thrips. So thrips are one of the hardest houseplant pests to get rid of. I have successfully battled thrips on my large non-variegated Monstera deliciosa, so I knew what to do with this one. The first thing I did was take it to the sink and rinse it down with cold water to rinse off as much as the problem bugs as I could. Then I sprayed it down with Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew, which is one of my favorite easy to use insecticides. You just buy it ready-made in a bottle at your local nursery. And then in case it was thrips, since I did not know what stage they were in development, I added some of the systemic granules that I keep on hand as well to the soil, which is not something that I like to do often, but it does work. Look those up. They do not ship to all states online, but in Maryland, I can get them here. So I did that. I ended up cutting off 2 of the leaves, which as you can imagine was very, very painful to do since the plant only had 3 leaves. And this one was the only leaf that was left after I cut off 2 of the leaves. Now I did cut off the leaves because they were yellowing. They had clearly been through distress and they just really weren't contributing anything to the plant anymore. So as a Hail Mary, I left this one, I repotted it into a terracotta plant pot with fresh soil, and I threw it outside in the shade, hoping that the warm temperatures and Maryland humidity would do its magic, and it certainly has, because this is the most recent leaf and it is stunning. So I'm planning to keep this plant out for the rest of the season. Hopefully I get at least 1 more leaf this growing season, and then I will bring it in for the winter. All right, guys, so that was my Thai Constellation Monstera overview. I really love all Monsteras and tropical plants, but the Thai Constellation just has a really gorgeous variegation, so it's no wonder why it's so popular. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, make sure you hit the subscribe button for my future plant care videos, and remember, you can always visit my blog if you also like reading about plants. So I'll see you next time.